All right, let's just dive right in. Today's explainer looks at a seriously chilling, high stakes dare that completely blurs the line between a fun little urban legend and an absolute documented nightmare. We're unpacking the last tenant of room 214. It's a terrifying sequence of events inspired by real occurrences that honestly left investigators completely baffled. So, let me ask you something right off the bat. Would you spend a single night in an abandoned motel room for $5,000? Back in October 2023, a 28-year-old Oregon photographer named Ethan Brooks got an anonymous email pitching exactly this terrifying proposition.
5 grand. I mean, for Ethan, this amount of money was literally impossible to pass up. He ran this tiny paranormal YouTube channel, and let's be real, he was struggling. His stuff barely cracked 5,000 views on a good day. So when this anonymous email drops in his inbox offering a massive payday just for hanging out somewhere overnight with his camera, he figured it was going to be the easiest money he'd ever make. He took the deal.
So they sent him GPS coordinates to the Black Pines Motel. This place is deep inside the dense forests of northern Oregon, literally miles from civilization. And you know what's really interesting about this location? It's completely frozen in time. The motel officially shut down way back in 2005 after this really mysterious fire. We're talking rusted out cars, busted neon signs, the whole shebang. It has such a heavy, unsettling vibe that locals absolutely refuse to even drive past the property after sunset. Well, when Ethan actually gets there, he realizes the place isn't totally abandoned. There's this old caretaker named Walter who still keeps an eye on the crumbling grounds. So Ethan struts up, super confident, and demands access to room 214 to do his little dare. But Walter's face just drains of all color. He gives Ethan this hushed, terrified warning. You can film anywhere, just not that room. It's waiting for someone. And Ethan, totally blinded by the money, just kind of laughs it off. It took hours of convincing, but Walter finally caved and handed over this heavy, rusty key. But right as he drops it into Ethan's hand, he gives him one final, absolutely crucial condition. He says, whatever happens, don't answer the knocking. Notice he didn't say if there's knocking, but when. So with that super ominous instruction just kind of hanging in the air, Ethan grabs the key and heads upstairs. Ethan pushes the door open and steps inside room 214. The vibe in there was incredibly creepy, mostly because everything looked completely untouched for 18 years. No electricity whatsoever, just an old dead TV in the corner, a severely cracked mirror reflecting the dark, and this really dusty bed. So he sets up his camera gear, totally alone in the pitch black, and just settles in to wait out the night. Now look at how rapidly everything just breaks down. At midnight on the dot, his camera battery unexplainably nosedives from a full charge to just 8%. Okay, weird. At 12:01 a.m., his cell phone completely drops all signal, 0 bars. At 12:02 a.m., the temperature inside the room absolutely plummets, you could see his breath, and then at exactly 12:03 a.m., the first knock. 3 slow knocks at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan literally froze in his tracks. Walter's explicit warning to stay silent just screamed in his head. So standing there in this freezing, pitch-black room, he didn't make a single sound. He just waited, his heart practically pounding out of his chest. 30 agonizing seconds go by. Then, another knock. But this time, a woman's voice whispers from the other side of that paper-thin wooden door, "Ethan, I forgot my room key." You guys, his blood ran cold. I mean, absolutely nobody knew he was at that motel tonight, let alone in that specific abandoned room. So totally ignoring every basic survival instinct he has, Ethan slowly looks over into that cracked mirror. At first, he just sees himself in the gloom, but then a figure slowly appears, standing directly behind his shoulder. It was a woman in a burned motel uniform. Her face was completely blackened from fire, and her eyes were a startling, milky white. In pure, sheer terror, Ethan spins around to face her, but there's nothing there. The room is completely empty. But when he slowly turns back to look at the mirror again, the reflection smiled. And I don't mean Ethan smiled. His reflection smiled back at him all on its own while he just stood there absolutely paralyzed with horror. And the worst part? His camera was capturing every single second of it. Then, completely out of nowhere, the bathroom doors slammed shut with a massive
Bang.
The knocking at the main door starts up again, but it's not those slow, creepy taps anymore. It's violent now. Bang. Someone or something is just pounding on that wood with unbelievable force.
Bang. The stakes are at their absolute peak right now, and Ethan is just trapped in a state of pure primal panic, completely cornered in the dark.
And then comes the most horrifying realization of the entire night. That aggressive voice pounding on the door outside, it spoke again. But it wasn't the woman's whisper anymore. The voice now sounded exactly, literally identical to Ethan's own voice, screaming from the hallway. "Open the door! I'm trapped outside!" Right as Ethan is about to completely lose his mind, the main door just bursts open. It's Walter. The old caretaker charges into the room holding up this heavy old lantern, just screaming at the top of his lungs, "Don't look at her!" Without even hesitating, Walter swings that heavy lantern and smashes the cursed mirror into a million pieces. And the very second that glass shattered, the entire room fell into a dead, heavy silence. Standing there in the quiet of that broken room, Walter finally unpacked the whole tragic truth. 20 years ago, during that mysterious fire we talked about, a motel employee actually burned alive, trapped right there inside room 214. Nobody came to help her. Walter confessed that ever since that terrible night, anyone who actually answers the knock at that door simply disappears forever. The only thing they ever leave behind is their camera equipment. Walter had literally been living out there in the woods, just waiting and praying that nobody else would ever go into that room. Well, Ethan definitely didn't stick around to chat. He bolted before sunrise, snatching up his camera as he ran. But when investigators later reviewed the surviving footage, they found something deeply, deeply disturbing. On side A, you've got the real Ethan, right? He fled, he survived, and he immediately deleted every single YouTube channel he owned. But on side B, the footage revealed a horrifying final piece of evidence. For exactly 4 seconds, the broken shards of the mirror still reflected room 214, even after Ethan had already sprinted out of the frame. Standing right beside the bed was another Ethan, just smiling directly into the camera lens. To kind of wrap up the aftermath of this whole terrifying night, the Black Pines Motel remains completely abandoned to this day. It is never reopened. But, the locals out in Northern Oregon will swear up and down that the property isn't quite as dead as it looks. They claim that if you stop your car right outside the abandoned motel at exactly 2:14 a.m. on the dot, you can still hear 3 slow knocks, just waiting for the next tenant. So I want to leave you with this final thought as we close out today's explainer. Really put yourself in Ethan's shoes for a second. If you were sitting there all alone in the dark and you heard 3 slow knocks outside your door at 2:14 a.m., what would you do?